What do we want this place to be like, this great Pacific Northwest? The mountains and forests, sky and soil, rivers and inland seas. What do we want it to be like now? What sort of legacy are we leaving for the next generation?
If we don't find a way of trimming back our carbon footprint, the world as we know it is not going to exist for our grandchildren.
When it comes to sustainability, what role should universities, institutions of higher learning, be playing?
If we're developing these great things in the laboratory and through our research, how do we translate them into real action?
For the past century, the University of Washington has been searching for the answers. Its commitment to sustainability has served as a model, a gold standard to other universities around the country.
We know that these are really compound, interrelated problems, and we need to have a lot of perspectives on how to understand the mechanisms. That's why UW is such a strong place for us to do this work.
Journey with us as we discover how the University of Washington has become a catalyst for environmental change, from groundbreaking research to innovative solutions created by students. We learn how the UW is turning itself inside out by giving our community and the world solutions for a better world. Can higher education stimulate teachers and learners alike to be more planet-minded? The University of Washington will continue to explore the possibilities in a climate of change. For the past 22 years, David Montgomery has been studying dirt. He's published a book about it and was awarded a MacArthur Fellow Genius Grant for his research. A professor of Earth and Space Sciences at the University of Washington, Montgomery is concerned about the way we've been treating what he calls our most underappreciated resource, soil.
You think about all the resources that we really need and think of as strategic. There's oil, there's water, but we don't tend to think of soil that way. Yet, where does our food come from? 97% of our food comes from the soil. People have long been treating soil in ways that deplete the soil, degrade soil fertility, that actually, it turns out, limit the lifespan of civilizations. So the way people treat land, the way people farm, the practices that people use to grow food can have a huge effect on the longevity, stability, the sustainability of human societies.
A classic example? The Dust Bowl in the 1930s. Severe drought combined with unsustainable farming practices triggered a century's worth of erosion in a matter of days.
The grasslands that cover the native soils in the Dust Bowl area were very effective at preventing erosion. And when wide swaths of the region were plowed up, the next time there was a big windstorm after a big drought, well, there's nothing holding the land together, and it literally blew away.
Montgomery says if the world population reaches 10 billion by the end of the century, as many predicted will, we could be looking at a pandemic catastrophe unless we change the way we farm.
If we look at the primary agent that has degraded soils in the past, it actually is the plow. You know, the most fundamental icon of agriculture turns out to have led to the downfall of society after society. How does that work? Well, what does a plow do? It turns the earth over, leaves it bare and vulnerable, exposed to wind and rain for some portion of the year. There are ways to farm without using the plow that it can actually be as productive as the way we traditionally have farmed. No-till farming, planting crops through the stubble of last year's crop, leaving some kind of cover on the ground surface is a very effective way to reduce erosion.
Montgomery's extensive research on land use also includes the changes we've made historically to waterways. The rivers we know and love today bear little resemblance to what they looked like back in the 19th century. Back then, waterways like the Tolt River, nestled in the western foothills of the Cascade Mountains east of Seattle, were chock full of fallen trees and woody debris. But explorers removed it all, because they looked at rivers as highways for navigation and transportation. Only one thing was forgotten: the fish.
A river full of wood is actually fairly good for salmon, it turns out. What does wood do? If you stick a big log, a big old growth tree out in the middle of a river like this, it'll deflect flow. That flow will scour out a pool. That pool provides slow water habitat that is a good resting place for a fish like a salmon. And as fast water floats by a slow water pool, well, food's being delivered to a nice place to hang out. It actually creates good salmon habitat. And one of the things that happened when the rivers of western Washington were cleaned up, where the wood was removed, was that the number of pools declined. The nature of the habitat changed, the character of the rivers changed.
That contributed to a huge decline in salmon populations. Now, in the 21st century, major restoration efforts to reintroduce wood to rivers are underway.
The foundational level issue is understanding how those systems actually work and how our actions have changed them in the past and might change them in the future, hopefully for the better. And so a lot of the research that I've done on rivers in western Washington has been focused on those kinds of issues. How do the systems really work? It's my firm belief that we'll make better policy decisions if we have better science that actually can be used to inform those decisions.
Finding a balance between our needs and the needs of the planet. That's what Dave Montgomery hopes to accomplish with his research. It is the type of research that exemplifies the UW's long-standing commitment to protecting the environment.
It's an extraordinary place to be because it's a place that cares about people and about the planet and their interrelationship.
Michael Young, president of the University of Washington, says sustainability is in our nature. The natural beauty that surrounds us has a lot to do with our motivation to preserve it.
The Northwest is an extraordinary place to live. We have water, we have mountains, we have trees, we have just about everything in between. And it's one of the great attractions, but I think it gives us a particular sensitivity to how where we live and how we treat where we live matters in our lives. So I think this commitment comes very organically from the university.
But President Young says an institution of higher learning must also be an institution of higher action. Otherwise, it falls short of its true purpose.
How do we get what we do in the laboratory out into the lives of real people so it makes a difference? And we put a lot of stress on commercialization, a lot of stress on having our professors connected to the communities that we're trying to study and better understand, connected to the problems that we're addressing.
Being connected to the Seattle community was the impetus behind the UW playing an active role in the development of a most unusual structure.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Steve, for the opportunity. We were eager to get a chance to show you the building.
That's because there is no other building like it. On the edge of Seattle's Capitol Hill, the brand new 6-story, 50,000 square foot Bullitt Center is being touted as the most sustainable, carbon-neutral office space on the planet.
This building really is the greenest commercial urban office building in the world. By far, it uses less energy than any comparable building in Seattle.
Rob Pena, associate professor in the UW's Department of Architecture, says it all begins with an array of photovoltaic solar panels on the roof. The idea is for the Bullitt Center to generate as much electricity as it uses over the course of the year.
Half the year, the building will be producing more electricity than it needs.
The energy efficiency doesn't end there. Automated windows open and close depending on what's happening inside and outside of the building to keep a constant, moderate temperature.
Just outside of the windows are the deployable blinds. So on a sunny day, if sun is striking that window, shades will automatically deploy. There'll still be plenty of daylight coming in, but they'll keep the heat from coming in the building, and that'll reduce the need for air conditioning in this building.
Down in the basement, things get really interesting. The Bullitt Center uses ground source heat pumps that tap into the heat of the earth beneath the building.
There are 26 400-foot deep wells that go vertically directly under this building. They circulate fluid down into the ground. As it comes back up, it extracts some of that heat with it, which runs into a heat pump.
The heat pump generates warm water that's funneled through pipes buried under the floors. Hence, the entire building is kept warm with radiant heating in the floor.
A commercial office building in Seattle, as much as a third of its energy would be used for heating. And in this building, which has a much smaller overall energy use pie, it's only 3% of the electricity.
There are other equally important aspects to the center. Rainwater is collected on the roof, stored in a 56,000-gallon cistern where it goes through a sophisticated filtration system.
In the future, it'll be used for drinking, for showering, for hand washing.
In the meantime, captured rainwater is used for irrigating gardens. And another important function.
This building has no flushing toilets. Instead, the deposits that people leave in the bathrooms will come straight down into one of these 10 composters.
Waterless toilets deliver waste directly into giant composting bins in the basement. A foamy mixture containing just a tablespoon of rainwater is automatically released into the funnel-shaped bowls to speed up the process.
You know what's pretty cool about experiencing these composters after they've been in operation for about a month is you don't smell a thing. There is human waste in these composters, but because they're working, because aerobic digestion is happening, you don't smell a thing.
The Bullitt Center prides itself in containing no hazardous materials, and much of the structure has been framed with locally certified Forest Stewardship Council timber.
Timber has a lot of great advantages over steel or concrete. This timber doesn't have to be wrapped with fireproofing that a steel building would have to be. So you use less materials, plus you have this beautiful exposed structure.
The University of Washington's Integrated Design Lab, an arm of the Architecture Department, will now be located in the Bullitt Center, as it should. The lab played an active role in the planning and modeling of the building and will now be responsible for monitoring its progress.
We do research on high-performance buildings around the state of Washington, around the country, but in particular we're interested in this building and using it as a living laboratory for our students and for our own research on how to make many more of these. Because if this is still the greenest high-performance building in a decade, the experiment will have been a failure.
That is the ultimate goal, to influence others to build structures similar to this one. Rob Pena hopes the lessons learned here will influence future centers on the UW campus.
The University of Washington and its leadership is very interested in the technology and the innovation that can happen here, that can be incubated here and can transfer over to the University of Washington's campus. So we'll be taking knowledge about energy and human behavior in buildings that we learn in this building and taking it to the campus.
Embracing sustainability, modeling a new kind of behavior that's vital to a green planet. At the University of Washington, a special atmosphere has taken root that welcomes a diversity of disciplines.
It's everything from our art students to our business students to our engineering students.
Anamari Kause, provost of the University of Washington, says when it comes to sustainability, there's a paradigm shift happening at the UW that begins with our students.
And when I talk to our students on campus, when I talk to young people, they are much more aware than we ever were about the fact that the natural world, the world that we live in now, the world that was given to us, really needs a little bit of tender loving care, and that we do need to work and we need to think about, we need to be much more conscious of how we interact with the world if we want to keep that kind of ecosystem. They grew up so much more with this mindset. They never got into some of the habits that our generation got into, and that's fabulous, and that's part of how we're learning from them.
Some of that learning can come from where you least expect it. An estimated 50% of women in the U.S. over the age of 25 color their hair. Blonde, brunette, redhead, and purple. The question is, what's all that synthetic hair dye doing to the environment?
It's getting washed down the drain, it's ending up in the sewer systems, it's ending up in the marine environment.
Alyssa Joaquin, a senior majoring in chemical engineering, says around 3 million pounds of toxic dye works its way into our ecosystems every year.
It can damage plants, it can damage wildlife.
So Alyssa and a team of students at the University of Washington are trying to do something about that. They've come up with a non-toxic hair solution called Goldilocks.
One of the interesting things about gold nanoparticles is the size of them will determine what color they are.
By replacing harmful chemicals with microscopic particles of real gold, Alyssa is creating a safe solution for everyone's coloring needs.
Gold nanoparticles are attractive to this because they've been used in medical applications, so they're biologically inert, they don't pollute the environment, and they're safe to use.
Alyssa hopes Goldilocks does more than attract the attention of hair coloring manufacturers. Her team is competing in the annual Environmental Innovation Challenge, a clean tech science and business plan competition sponsored by the UW's Foster School of Business and the College of Engineering. 20 teams of students have several months to develop innovative products that will offer viable solutions to today's environmental problems. The winning team receives $10,000 for further development.
We want to make a licensable product that can be used by several companies.
Our revolutionary hair coloring technology.
Reed Backstrom is in charge of marketing Goldilocks.
When you consider everything that you do every day, which is swipe a deodorant, color your hair, brush your teeth, put makeup on, every one of those little actions has an environmental impact. And so what we're trying to do is address this one right here.
Reed says he got a lot of marketing help from consultants working with the UW Foster School of Business.
If it weren't for Foster, we'd be kind of guessing and checking our way through this. If you start spending a bunch of wasted time on something that someone else could tell you in 10 minutes, you're ultimately distracting yourself from everything else you should be doing. So if not for Foster, we'd be kind of lost.
Jeff Mack is also competing in the Environmental Innovation Challenge. He's leading a team called Lion Tail Cycles that is engineering a custom electric assist kit that supplies all the power you could ever want on a bicycle. The kit can be added onto any bike and is especially useful with cargo bikes.
With a cargo bike, you can load more and carry more than you can on a normal bike to enhance its everyday usability, so you can do things like go to the grocery store, pick up kids. So we're building the kit to try and offer an alternative, to that, and just give people more choices in how they can get around.
The kit contains a battery pack to assist you while you're pedaling. It can power a lighting system or be set up to recharge your smartphone while you ride to work. It can even power a stereo. Ann Barker, an MBA student at the Foster School of Business, believes there is a marketplace for Lion Tail Cycles electric assist kit.
We found from our survey that the people who were most excited about the product were people who were former regular commuter cyclists whose situation changed in one way or another. Either they started a family or started a job where they had to wear dressier attire, and commuting by bicycle is no longer an option. So a great start would be to market to this type of person who's still passionate about cycling but has found some new barriers in their life.
With project prototypes ready to go, the Environmental Innovation Challenge Showdown is on at the Seattle Center Exhibition Hall. 20 teams pitch their ideas to more than 100 judges.
As you change the way it reflects the light, that's how you change the color of your hair.
It's a grueling day. For 8 hours, students pitch their ideas to judges floating from group to group. Even if they don't win, Connie Barasa Shah, director of the Burke Center for Entrepreneurship in the Foster School of Business, says the lessons learned here will be beneficial to students in the years to come.
So they get to see how people respond to what they're doing and what they're saying. And then during the demo part, they're really answering questions. So it is about visibility, it's about making connection to the judges from the entrepreneurial and environmental community. It's about testing the idea and seeing how far you can take it.
The Environmental Innovation Challenge typifies the UW's entrepreneurial spirit. to be curious, to uncover problems, and to discover solutions.
Complex problems are really hard to define, let alone solve.
Sandra Archibald, Dean of the Evans School of Public Affairs, says a multi-departmental, multi-generational approach is necessary when it comes to building a sustainable world.
And one reason the UW is such a good place to do this is it's one of the few research institutions and universities in the world that has the array of basic disciplines that we need to think about how we understand and solve these problems. Forest science, oceanography, philosophy, good natural resource economics, very strong public policy. So we know that these are really compound, interrelated problems, and we need to have a lot of perspectives on how to understand the mechanisms.
Collaboration is key, not only on campus, but with groups and agencies outside its borders. University of Washington Tacoma realizes this. That's why their researchers and students are working hand in hand with the City of Tacoma and the Puget Sound Partnership at the Center for Urban Waters.
It's a great experimental laboratory for us to work in.
On the banks of the Theophos Waterway, northeast of downtown Tacoma, Science Director Joel Baker is pleased that UW Tacoma is sharing space and knowledge with two other agencies in the stunning, eco-friendly Center for Urban Waters building. They all have one thing in mind: saving Puget Sound.
It's a really daunting problem in water quality to figure out where pollutants come from, and we want to provide the best science information to the regulatory agencies and to the cities who are ultimately responsible for the cleanup of places like the Foss Waterway, Commencement Bay. The first step of that is understanding where the pollution comes from, and that's largely what our research is about.
Okay, so what did we find? Let's see, Alex, what do you see in here? Do you see any plastic?
On this particular day, the research consists of trolling the Theophos Waterway for small pieces of plastic.
Unfortunately, we do find a lot of it out here, so.
Julie Misori is a faculty member and researcher at the Center for Urban Waters. She spends a good part of her time tracking pollutant sources in Puget Sound.
You see all that white stuff with styrofoam?
Well, persistent toxic chemicals tend to grab the headlines in our troubled waters. Microplastics can be just as dangerous.
Now, we do see harm with plastics with organisms like birds or like sea mammals that basically become entangled in the plastic or as they ingest it. The question is how is it impacting smaller microorganisms or smaller organisms? And the fact is we find plastic in the guts of fish, we find plastic in clams, we find plastic in jellyfish that have consumed plastics.
At the Center for Urban Waters, researchers and students are trying to understand and quantify the sources, pathways, and impacts of pollutants in urban waterways. Highly sensitive analytical tools are used to measure contaminant levels.
So right now what I'm going to do is show you what we collected with my assistant here, so we can go drop the net.
UW students like Alex Geip work side by side with environmental scientists like Julie Misori, hoping to gain some valuable training along the way.
I'm hoping to go into this kind of research work, so these are the stuff right up my alley. This is teaching me skills I'm going to need down the road to develop my own research projects. It's teaching me skills on how to manage other people and how to get samples taken care of, get them in the lab, and get them processed.
In the lab, solids are separated from water samples. After they dry, they are dipped into a hydrogen peroxide bath that will oxidize all of the natural organic material, like the grasses and the pine needles. That leaves nothing but plastic.
And then we'll actually use this microscope here and we'll pick out the individual pieces of plastic and we'll measure the mass of that, and we'll be able to tell the concentration of plastics in the water that we sampled today.
It may seem insignificant, a little bit of plastic in the bay, but Julie Misori says there is an important lesson to be learned from all of this.
That plastic that's in the ocean or in our Puget Sound or whatever water body was done by you and I.
When we think of water pollution, unsightly oil spills and industrial discharges come to mind. We rarely consider the contributions we make every day.
It really brings it home to people when they can understand that the stuff that goes down their sink, goes down their toilets, makes it up right here. It doesn't just go off to some magical place, it comes right out here to Puget Sound.
Preserving our waterways. That's one way the UW is taking an active stand in making our world more sustainable. Once again, the effort at the Center for Urban Waters begins with students.
Our students are very interested in the ideas of sustainability. Frankly, we don't quite know what that means all the time. So we spend a lot of time talking with our students and developing curriculum around the issues of sustainability, thinking about how they can put those ideas into practice regardless of what their future careers are going to be.
How do we teach such a sweeping and all-encompassing subject? How do we nurture the leaders of tomorrow? Next on Climate of Change,
where is the water going and how is it working or not working?
We explore 2 outdoor laboratories, the Bothell Wetlands and the 4,300-acre Pack Forest in Eatonville.
We are a working forest, we're a sustainable forest. We're not just demonstrating sustainable practices, we're actually living them or practicing them on the land.
What are students learning out in the field that will help keep the planet clean and green?
Having worked at Pack Forest as a research assistant has really helped me understand how you implement land management that's responsible and helps ensure that resources are there for future generations.
And visit a farm like no other, a sustainable farm run by UW students. All this and more next time on Climate of Change.